Hey everyone, I'm the Rev. Automobilista 2 has been updated to 1.6.6.1. As well as a good few bug fixes, this week also saw some new content. We got 6 new cars and one, well, kinda new track. It's reskinned. It's the Nordschleife 2025. So in this quick video, I want to talk you through each of the cars and also the track. So starting with the Endurance Pack Part 3. How much does it cost? Well, in the UK, it was £8.99, which is roughly £1.50 a car, and I think that's pretty good value, to be honest with you. So let's go through all 6 of those new cars, and I'm going to do it in my order of preference after driving them all. So we'll start with the Ligier. Now this was a bit of a surprise, I don't think anybody was expecting this car. However, after driving it for a few laps around Donington Park, I didn't find it particularly enjoyable. There was nothing wrong with the force feedback or the physics, it was simply personal preference. I found it very understeery, a bit down on power and just not much fun. The car model itself was well made, as you'd expect these days from Rising Studios. In terms of the engine notes, it sounded nice enough, but once again, nothing really to write home about. I don't think this is a car that I'd return to very often in the future, and as such, it's my least favourite car of the Endurance Pack Part 3. So what was next? What was my next least favourite? Well, this could be a touch controversial, but it was the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 Evo. Now I'll start by saying that it looks great, the cockpit's great, the car model's great, and it sounds good too. So what's your problem, Rev? Well, it's the handling, and it's not just the Aston Martin GT3, it's all the GT3s on Automobilista 2. The game has always had a reputation for having floaty handling, and I feel that that's very pronounced in the GT3 category, even if it's not exactly the way that I would describe it. For me, I feel as though the cars pivot on a central point. If the front has grip, the rear has none. If the rear has grip, the front has none. That's just my own personal feeling. You may feel something very different, but I just feel that in terms of this category, there are much better representations out there, and I personally would choose to drive one of those before I drove Automobilista 2's GT3s. So which was next? Well, it's the Aston Martin Vantage GTE. And in the same vein as the GT3, the car model itself is fantastic. It sounds great and it looks great. So its position on the list once again comes down to handling, and I'd say that it's pretty much the same as the GT3, if less pronounced. For some reason, and I've no idea why because I couldn't program a physics engine if my life depended on it, this car just feels that little bit better than the GT3. That pivoting that I mentioned, it's just less pronounced in the GTE version of the car. It feels like there's a bit more grip, which just gives me a better feel and better connection to the road, which makes it a better drive. So next on the list is the GT4 version. What's this like? Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, the car model itself is beautiful. It looks great and it sounds great. And in my opinion, it drives better than both the GT3 and GTE versions. The GT4 category on Automobilista 2 has always felt better than the GT3s to me, and this car's no exception. It just has more grip, it feels more planted, which subsequently means that it just doesn't feel as though it's pivoting on the centre like the GT3 cars. Throwing this Aston Martin round Donington Park in this category was great fun, and in my opinion, this Aston Martin GT4 is a great addition to the category. And of all the cars tested so far, this is the first one that I think I would actually come back to. So what was next? Well, it was the Aston Martin Valkyrie. Now, I have extensive experience with this car on Le Mans Ultimate, so it's a car that I'm familiar with, and I was really looking forward to trying it in Automobilista 2. And luckily, I wasn't let down in the slightest. It looks great, it sounds great, if not as good as Le Mans Ultimate, I do have to admit, but it still sounds good, and it was a joy to drive. Throwing it round this Interlagos track, I had just as much fun as I did on Le Mans Ultimate. The two sims, they do feel different, but Automobilista 2 gets really close to that feeling of Le Mans Ultimate for me. Automobilista 2 was my first ever experience when it came to hypercars, and when it comes to track variety, for example, it has Le Mans Ultimate beaten hands down. So personally for me, this Valkyrie, this was worth the price of entry for the DLC. It's a brilliant car in every aspect and a well worthy addition to this category on Automobilista 2. So last but by no means least, my favourite car of the bunch, and no, I wouldn't have believed it either before I made this video, but it was the Alpine A110 GT4. As per every other car, Riser has done a fabulous job on the car model. It looks great and it sounds good. The cockpit, that's fantastic too. But the reason that this car was my favourite car from the pack was that it just felt so alive and so much fun to drive. I didn't get that floaty or pivoty type feeling, and the car felt really connected to the road, with good weight, really good detail coming back through the force feedback, and it was just great fun. As I threw it round the Nürburgring, I just sat there thinking, God Rev, I do wish you didn't feel sick when it came to VR, because I'd love to drive this car in VR round the Nürburgring. This was one of those cars that I would definitely put on if I had somebody round that had no idea about sim racing and I wanted to show them how much fun and how enjoyable it could be. The car gives you such good feeling back through the wheel, and it's just one of those cars that puts a smile on your face. So for me, this was the best car in the endurance pack, Part 3. And as we're on the Nordschleife, that brings me nicely to the Nordschleife 2025 upgrade. Now this update cost me £6.99. and it brings the Nordschleife up to the 2025 standard. It's got revised curbs, up-to-date graffiti and more trackside detail. Now I know the Nordschleife, and when I say I know it, I mean I know the track. I don't know it like the back of my hand, so I couldn't tell you what graffiti is on what wall or what graffiti is on which part of the track, so that doesn't mean a great deal to me. So I would say that if you were a massive Nordschleife fan, and you'd really notice these upgrades, it would probably be worth it to you. However, it wasn't really worth it to me. For me, coming from my perspective, I'd say that £6.99 is a bit steep when, if you asked me was I driving on the 2021 version or the 2025, I couldn't tell you. For me, it was just the Nordschleife. It looked as good here as it did before. So if, like me, you know the track but you don't know it like the back of your hand, you might find that you're a little bit disappointed. So what's the overall verdict on the DLC and the update to Automobilista 2? Well, in my opinion, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's some cars in there that I wouldn't return to, but then there's a couple of cars, the Valkyrie and the Alpine, that I think are fantastic. And those two cars alone, they made the Endurance Pack Part 3 worth the £9. They are cars that I will 100% return to, and both those cars make me so envious of you VR users, because you are going to have the time of your lives in those cars, in my opinion. So for me, they were the standout to this update. The update to the Nordschleife, that was a bit of a waste of money for me, in my opinion. I don't know the track enough to really see a difference. All the opinions given in this video are obviously just that, my opinion. I'm not an expert, not by any stretch. I'm just some bloke that decided to make a video on it. But what I'll always provide you with is my honest opinion. I would have liked to have been able to dedicate a bit more time to making this video, however 12-hour night shifts meant that I just didn't have the time this week. So my apologies if it comes across a touch disjointed. If you like what I do on this channel, please hit that like and subscribe button, as it would massively help me out. So that's enough twittering on from me. As always, I've been the Reverend. Thank you very much for watching.